Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, everyone. Thank you for joining us for today's webinar on how WISPs are responding during COVID-19. This session is being recorded, and if you have any questions, please enter them into the questions panel, and also be sure to check the handouts panel to download any attached documents. Today we have David Island, Director of North America Service Provider Market, and Ray Savage, Director of Product Marketing. Also from Cambium, we have Kelly Hatcher and Sergio Albu. At this point, I will pass it over to you, David.
Okay, yeah, thanks for the intro. Hello, everybody. We're going to spend a few minutes this morning talking about the impact of COVID-19 on wireless internet service providers. So, it's very interesting times, and I have the luxury of being able to work with service providers in the U.S. and helping them build their networks and respond to this pandemic. And there's been some very definite impacts that we'd like to share with all of you. This presentation is going to be very high level. It's not designed to be technical. So we're going to talk a little bit about the impact of networks, but what we're not going to talk about is how the networks work or the technology that is used per se or the bands. So if you have any interest in that, feel free to reach out to us and we'll be glad to get into the technical details. So the idea here is to talk about, well, what is this pandemic doing to people's networks and how is that impacting their business and to a certain degree our business? Being a major radio vendor, we're the suppliers to most of the largest wireless internet service providers in the US and to a certain extent tier 2 service providers. The line between a WISP and the telephone company or even cable companies is blurring. As most of you are probably aware, most networks today have some combination of terrestrial fiber parts as well as wireless, so that the combination of the two becomes the most efficient way to deliver broadband to a wide variety of users. So let's take a couple minutes and talk about kind of what's going on. So as you would probably expect, as a result of the pandemic, more people are working from home, and when they're there, they're consuming more broadband services like Netflix, as well as the usage of video like we are today, webinars, and so forth. So I kind of took a couple notes here in advance of this, saying to myself, well, what am I really seeing? So the first thing I think you're seeing is, from a political standpoint, bipartisan support for rural broadband. So, I mean, that's always been there, but one of the trends I see is that everybody kind of recognizes more an increase in awareness that first, the rural part of our country is a lot bigger than people recognize, right? I mean, most people live in urban areas, and so they may not have an awareness of the extent of our country that is what we call underserved. But so one of the trends is that awareness is greater. People are more aware of it, and as a result, the politicians want to get behind it. And what's unique about that is that this is bipartisan, right? Everybody's in favor of this, right? And in this day and age, there's not a lot of things that everybody can get behind. So when they find something, it's a good thing, and this is one of them. So you'll see broad support for all types of different funding mechanisms to try to close the digital divide. And COVID-19 has caused that awareness to go up. And it's pretty obvious, right? The kids need to go to school remotely, and if they don't have broadband access, they can't access their schoolwork, and everybody wants to get behind kids. So what's the second thing? So the other thing I'm seeing that's a trend is understanding of wireless. So before COVID-19, I think people kind of knew there was wireless out there, but one of the trends I definitely am aware of is a greater awareness of wireless, in that I can use wireless to serve, and I don't mean mobile, I mean fixed wireless, in the sense that this is a tool in the toolbox for all carriers to deliver broadband. And so why has awareness gone up? that awareness has gone up because it's fast, right? So when all the kids had to go take school remotely, you had this issue of how can I get them service to people that don't have service? And as everyone knows, it takes a long time to dig a trench and put a fiber in. It doesn't take long to throw up a wireless link. So more awareness of wireless, and so that's definitely a trend. Next trend, extension of busy hour. So we were talking yesterday, busy hour, maybe I'm old school, that's like an old telco voice term, but the busy hour meaning when do I see the peak usage? So before COVID-19, peak usage was like 9 o'clock at night. Everybody's aware that people are streaming more than ever, and so that drove peak usage.
So just curious, by how much has peak network usage changed during COVID-19 for your network? Is it 0%, up 25%, up 50, up 75, or doubled or more? So you can enter your answer and then we'll show the results afterwards.
Great, thanks, Olivia. And thank you, everybody, for sharing your experience and being part of this.
Yeah, most people say up 50%, up 25%, and up 75%. A few even say doubled or more. So
Well, thank you, everybody, for participating in that. I think when you take a look at the numbers, as Dave was getting to the point, this just seems your experience is very much in line with what we've been hearing anecdotally from around the world.
So I just want to talk about two more trends. We talked about, first off, we talked about support for rural broadband. Then we talked about understanding wireless. Then we talked about extending of the busy hour. So there's one other trend I want to talk about is expanding the backhaul requirements. So there we go. Oop. Okay. So we had a broad group on here, so I didn't want to make assumptions that everybody knew how a wireless network works. So this is a slide that Cambium uses in terms of what we call the gigabit wireless fabric. And the idea here is that if you look in the central part of this diagram, you have basically a standard WISP network, right? Where you have a tower. I don't know if you can see my cursor, but you have a radio on a tower and it's sending signals down to homes, right? And then that tower then has to be backhauled to a terrestrial network. So it's a standard point to multi-point network. And then the other thing I wanted to show is this other area here to the left, which we call edge access. And most of us consume that as what we think it to be as a Wi-Fi access point, right? So Cambium does Wi-Fi access points as well as our classic point to multi-point WISP network. So the fourth trend that we're seeing is the expansion of the backhaul, because as we talked about, because our busy hour is now extended, the total volume of usage is going up. So a standard WISP network is designed with a certain degree of what you would call oversubscription, right? So if every user were to be downloading everything all the time, then you wouldn't have enough backhaul capacity, right? So we designed the network to a certain degree of oversubscription, and that's how networks have always been built, including voice networks, back in the beginning of telephony. So, but however, because of COVID-19, more users are using more bandwidth more of the time. So what does that put strain on? It puts strain on the backhaul, right? So if you have 100 users on a tower using 100 megabits a second, right, you need a gig backhaul. So you're seeing people having to upgrade because there's more than 100 users on a lot of towers. You may have 100 users in a sector. So we're seeing a lot of demand to increase backhaul. So those are the four trends I saw. And so let's move forward and turn it over to Kelly to talk a little bit about their experiences with some specific examples. Kelly's going to do Resound, and Serge is going to do MaxWire at MVTV.
May help if I unmute myself.
There you go, Kelly.
All right. So yeah, Resound, they're Resound Networks. They're out of Pampa, Texas, which is up in the Panhandle. And so the situation that they had locally was that they had schools, Pampa ISD, basically they had 5 campus locations that did not have internet in the parking lot. So what they did was they took Wi-Fi EPs to go and took those and put those into school parking lots. That way, students, they estimated around 380 students in the Pampa ISD network that did not have internet. So these students are now able to go into the parking lot and upload their assignments, download assignments, and continue their schoolwork. And so that was all done within a 1 week time period. So they had to do this really quickly to get these students back online and get them up and running.
Okay, perfect. So I had exactly similar case as Kelly, and we've actually seen this throughout our region that we cover in the U.S. Obviously, when the pandemic hit and all the closures started, schools were some of the the ones that were most affected. Obviously, students couldn't continue their education, so in a lot of cases, the only way you could keep up with schoolwork and classes was through online schooling. A lot of the rural areas, in the United States are very poorly covered, in some cases with no connectivity. So in order to continue the trends and be able to keep the kids in school, you have to somehow get them connected, which is, key to them being able to continue their education. So in one case in rural Illinois, MaxWire, one of Cambium's internet service providers, they decided to step up and work with the school, and they set up four locations where they set up Wi-Fi hotspots. In this case, they were using Cambium Wi-Fi hotspots, which Cambium stepped up and actually provided the Wi-Fi hotspots in order to help to make sure that we get everything up and running and connected quickly. I believe within 5 days there was connectivity at 4 separate spots, including some drive-ins, which they got creative, be drive-ins, parking lots for people to be able to come in and log on online. And then they also extended their network to about 1,500 homes in an area that they didn't really serve previously. So this way they were able to, provide connection to some of the additional homes that had no connectivity. So this was just one case of a local wireless service provider working with the local school to, step up during the pandemic and provide internet. And everything they did, even the homes that they provided where the students lived, they did the zero touch installation where they drop off a router and they kind of walk through troubleshooting to make sure everybody's able to do the installation and get connected. So we've seen a lot of cases like this throughout the US. A lot of our service providers Dave mentioned, they had backhaul issues. In order to support 1,000, 2,000, 3,000 additional customers, you need to upgrade your backhaul, right? The take rates on internet in these rural areas where people don't really have options most of the time, maybe they'll use satellite or something else that has a lot of latency and you can't really stream anything. They came to the wireless service providers, and this is where I think Cambium, being so well distributed and being so well connected with so many different programs, we were able to find stock, be able to set up good pricing and good stock for our customers to buy and move quickly and provide the connectivity to some of these underserved areas. So I've been a part of this, and I think my whole team has, and it's been really, really great to see us moving so quick and adapting so quick and making online schooling and online everything. Really, it's the only way to be connected anymore. Make that possible for a lot of rural areas. So another similar case was in Minnesota, where same thing, MBTV, which is in very rural Minnesota in Granite Falls. They had helped with with a church in the area provide Wi-Fi through classrooms to support local families to continue their education and be able to have their kids keep up with with the schooling and everything else that they needed to do online. So I think we've seen, these are just a couple of examples. We've had a lot of similar situations where the local service provider has stepped up, and along with us, either doing the design, either helping with bulking up the backhaul, shipping gear, whatever it was. We were all able to provide teamwork and deliver equipment and solutions extremely quickly. I'll turn it back over to you, Dave, to continue your presentation. But those are my two examples that I had.
Yeah, thanks, Serge. And if anybody has questions, feel free to type them into the chat window. I don't see any yet, so we're hoping to get some of those. All right. So Ray, on to you for some of the international. Oh, no, sorry. We're going to talk about Sacred Wind. Okay. So Sacred Wind is one of our customers. Did it not advance? Hold on. Ah, there we go. Sacred Wind has helped build a network in the Navajo Nation. So one of the things that I think everybody's aware of is that some of these tribal areas are definitely in the category of underserved. And one of the things that we didn't talk about that's another trend is spectrum constraints. So a lot of existing WISPs are in these rural areas, are serving customers, but they are spectrum constrained. And as the bandwidth requirements have gone up, there was a desire to add more throughput, but they're limited by their spectrum. So they're operating in the 5 gigahertz band, and if there's a lot of operators in a given area, you may not have enough spectrum to be able to increase your channel sizes or serve more access points or subscriber modules. So what the FCC did was they authorized the use of the 5.9 gigahertz band. They basically extended the 5 gigahertz band temporarily. And one of the things that Cambium was able to do was reprogram our radios through a software upgrade to allow use of this band that was previously closed off. And we were able to do that within a matter of a couple of days. So as soon as the FCC opened it up, we provided a software update to our users. And this was a big help to the Navajo Nation. And there you can see a little picture of one of their solar powered broadband locations that they upgraded to the 5.9 band without necessarily having to dispatch technicians and save them a lot of time and money and offer better service. Okay, next use case, right?
Yeah, and thanks everybody. Obviously, so far we've talked about education and we've talked about what's been going on in the United States. Obviously, COVID is a global pandemic. There's a lot of things going on there. And the fact that wireless connectivity is not limited to one area, wireless can be deployed rapidly and give fiber-like speeds and connectivity. People around the world have been experimenting with wireless and finding that it gives tremendous benefits. So, for example, one of them is down in Colombia, and that's one of our partners, Skynet, connected the only medical facility in a very rural region in the country using wireless broadband. And this drew attention throughout the government. In fact, the president of Colombia, and you can see his own Twitter account right there, visited the site that was connected with our wireless connectivity solution. He shot a video of it. It's all on Twitter. I'd encourage you to take a look at that. It just shows how rapidly deployable connectivity can absolutely help in healthcare. But that's not all. There's more stories. So let's go to the next slide, please, Dave. Thank you. We had a health agency in New Zealand that was able to connect hospital Wi-Fi to support temporary facilities simply because they were concerned about the hospital size, not having enough bed space for people. Many hospitals put up extra tents, took over neighboring buildings, things like that, to support people. And obviously, in order to have all the facilities and services that a hospital requires, you have to have connectivity to share that information and data. It also has to be secure because a lot of it is obviously personal information. In Italy, we had a hospital that also did the same thing for a tent that was constructed in a parking lot. Obviously, they used outdoor connectivity to be able to provide Wi-Fi into that tent. And then in Spain, there was a fascinating situation where Iber Systems, who's a system integrator, took an existing hospital, installed Wi-Fi throughout the indoor areas of the hospital, and decided that they could put video cameras in every single patient room, so that from one location, somebody could actually monitor. They could read the vital signs. They could take a look at the patient there. One person could actually monitor significantly larger number of patients than they could using normal methods. In addition to that, what it gave them the ability to do was actually limit the number of person-to-person contacts with those COVID patients. So hospital care workers, healthcare workers didn't have to go through all of the personal protective equipment that needs to be discarded after every single patient visit. So in this one, they were able to improve care, they were able to improve efficiency of their limited resources, and they were able to take care of conserving the precious resources of the personal protective equipment. It's a great story. It's been written up in a couple of newspapers. You can find, we've been able to retweet that story on our website. You should be able to find it there. Let's go to the next slide, Dave. So what a lot of these solutions prove is that wireless ISPs are able to help local communities. Typically, when people look at deploying connectivity or solutions, they kind of start with the major urban markets and move their way outward. Certainly that's helpful, but when you've got the rural situation, those people do not tend to get the priority treatment that the large major cities do. But that's where the wireless ISPs play on a consistent basis. And the good news is they've got the network, they've got the skill, they know how to rapidly deploy solutions, and they're serving their hometown. And I know that many of you are who may be on the call have actually done other things that we haven't talked about. So if you could share your story so that others can learn from your best practices, certainly in a situation like this, best practices are important. And we talked earlier about Max providing drive-in Wi-Fi. On the screen there, you can see our solution paper that kind of details exactly how to do it, how to make it work. We've got other people that deployed Wi-Fi from school buses and drove those out in the community. The drive-in Wi-Fi solution paper is available as a handout as part of this webinar. I think if you just click over to the handouts box, you can just pick it up yourself and get that. But we also appreciate that you can share your best practices. Another thing that we'd like to do is build awareness of some of the great things that folks have done. As you may have heard, Cambium Networks has a Wireless Connectivity Hero Awards that we give out once a quarter. Actually, the folks from MaxWire won in first quarter, and also the folks from Resound Networks were recognized for their efforts. Costs nothing to enter, and we would be more than glad to hear your stories and get the nominations for people who've done outstanding things to help their community. Go to our website. You can look up Connectivity Hero Awards by Cambium. It'll take you right there. Nominating somebody costs you nothing, takes about 5 minutes, and we should be announcing the winners late this month. Also, while you're working from home, it's a great time to learn about the latest technology. The evolution of technology is not stopping, and as you may have known from Cambium Networks' recent announcements, we are working on solutions for 60 gigahertz. You'll be hearing more about that soon. We're working on Wi-Fi 6 solutions, and these actually offer multi-gigabit wireless throughput. So when people talk about multi-gigabit, everybody reflexively would think about fiber. Not so any longer. So take a look at some of the latest technologies, the latest tools that are available to you. You can find out on our website, you can find out on our community, And all this helps wireless ISPs be ready for whatever is coming next. Okay, well, thanks
Quite a
everybody.
group today.
And we will be posting a recording of this webinar to the Cambium Networks community and also YouTube. I'd encourage you to share it on social media, participate in the community, and let us know if you have a project where you need some guidance or assistance. We'd be more than glad to help. Thanks, everybody.
Have a great day. Thank you.